Was I wrong for arguing with my mother-in-law about whether my husband likes spaghetti? My husband and I were at my mother-in-law's house for dinner. After we ate, he offered to drive his youngest sister to a friend's house so mother-in-law could relax after cooking. While he was gone, mother-in-law, my sister-in-law, and I were chatting in the living room. Sister-in-law is getting ready to move out soon and asked me for easy dinner ideas. I mentioned spaghetti. Mother-in-law immediately reacted and asked if I only make that when my husband is working late. I said no, confused. She told me he doesn't like spaghetti, that's why she asked. That surprised me, because he not only eats it happily, but he actually requests it fairly often. When I said that, she suggested maybe it's just my favourite meal and he asks for it to please me. At that point, I could feel it turning into one of her usual "I know my son better than you ever will" moments. Normally I just let it go, but this time I didn't. I said that whenever I make spaghetti, he eats more than half of it and the leftovers disappear quickly. She turned to sister-in-law and insisted he used to gag over spaghetti. Sister-in-law shrugged and said maybe he changed his mind. Mother-in-law doubled down and said no, he's stubborn about this and she knows him. So I asked her directly if she thought I was lying about him liking spaghetti. She rolled her eyes and asked if this was really the hill I wanted to die on. I told her she could just ask him when he got back. She said she didn't need to, she already knew the answer. The room got awkward and quiet until my husband came back. The first thing I asked him was, "Do you like spaghetti?" He said yes, confused. I gestured to mother-in-law and said, "See?" She immediately got up and went to her room and stayed there until we left. Later, I explained everything to my husband. He genuinely didn't care, he just wondered why I'd randomly asked him about spaghetti. But about an hour later, mother-in-law sent him a long text saying I was rude and that I implied he only likes my spaghetti because I am a better cook than her, which I absolutely never said. Now I'm wondering, was I childish for pushing back? Should I have just let it go, even though I was tired of the constant implication that she knows him better than I do? Was I wrong for dyeing the sweater my sister-in-law knit for me? My sister-in-law offered to knit me a sweater. I'm a knitter too, so I understand how much time, effort, and money go into a handmade piece. When she offered, I said yes, but asked if I could choose the colour and offered to pay for the yarn. She declined and said she wanted to use yarn from her own stash. She's very into stash busting. I didn't push it. She made the sweater, and it fit beautifully. The craftsmanship was great, but the colour was beige, a shade I genuinely never wear. My wardrobe leans toward plums, roses, terracottas, olives, and other soft autumn tones. I don't gravitate toward plain beige at all. I really did love the sweater itself, though. So instead of letting it sit unworn, I dyed it a rich green that suits me. Now I wear it all the time. Recently, I wore it to a family gathering. She commented that it looked like the one she'd made me. I told her it was, but I had dyed it. She stared at me for a long moment and then said, "I wish you would have told me you were going to do something like that. I wouldn't have wasted my Malabrigo on you." I was honestly shocked. I told her I absolutely loved the sweater, I just wouldn't have worn it in beige. She got visibly upset and said she would remember not to knit for me again. And she left the room. We didn't speak the rest of the evening. I live in a different city, so I won't see her for a while. I understand she has every right to decide not to knit for me again. But was dyeing the sweater really that disrespectful? I thought it was better to modify it into something I'd actually wear and appreciate than let it sit unused. Was I wrong for a cocina at my boyfriend's workplace? I went to dinner with my boyfriend at the restaurant where he works as a pastry chef. I ordered a Caesar tortilla. After waiting about 45 minutes, I was served a Caesar salad instead. I politely told the waitress, "Excuse me, but I ordered the tortilla." She seemed annoyed but said they would fix it. My boyfriend told me to wait and went to the kitchen to make it himself. A few minutes later, he came back with a tortilla, but it was clearly just the salad they had already made, stuffed inside a wrap. The crispy breadcrumbs from the salad were still inside, and it didn't have the crispy bacon or melted cheese that the tortilla version is supposed to have, which was the whole reason I ordered it. I told him calmly that I didn't want to eat that because it wasn't what I ordered. I wasn't yelling or making a big deal, I just said we could go somewhere else to eat instead. He told me the kitchen would be closing soon. It was 9 p.m, kitchen closes at 11 p.m, and that I had been saying for hours how hungry I was, so I should just eat it. I said that wasn't the point, it simply wasn't what I ordered. He then called over his colleague the waitress and told her to take it off the bill. We left and went to a fast food place instead. Afterward, he was upset and said I embarrassed him and caused a scene in front of his coworkers. From my perspective, I spoke quietly, didn't argue with the staff, and simply declined to eat something I didn't order. For additional context, he's only worked there a few months, and he got the job through a connection my dad's friend is a co-owner. So now I'm wondering, was I wrong for not just eating it and avoiding the awkwardness? Or was it reasonable to refuse something that wasn't what I ordered? Was I wrong for shutting down my coworker's birthday prank instead of laughing along? I work in a small, tight-knit office where people pride themselves on being fun and like a family. Birthdays usually mean a grocery store cake and a card passed around for signatures. One coworker in particular allows for what he calls banda. He's the type who says, "Relax, it's just a joke if something doesn't land." Last week was my birthday. I don't love being the center of attention, but I didn't think much of it. When I walked in, my entire workstation had been dismantled and wrapped in aluminum foil, every cable unplugged, my keyboard individually wrapped, even my office chair spiraled in layers of it. My drawers had been sealed shut. People were gathered around my desk waiting. Someone had their phone out recording. At first, I gave a half laugh because I assumed it was just surface level harmless. But then I saw they had looked into my computer and changed my wallpaper to an old LinkedIn headshot I hate, zoomed in awkwardly and stretched. They'd also printed multiple copies and taped them around my cubicle like posters. That's why it stopped feeling funny. I felt put on the spot. Everyone was staring, waiting for me to deliver some big reaction for the video. I just said, "Can we not?" And not loudly. Not angrily. Just flat. The banter guy jumped in with, "Don't be like that, it's tradition." The few others chimed in about how they'd worked on it during lunch. Instead of laughing it off, I started quietly taking the foil off my stuff. I didn't thank anyone. I didn't smile. I didn't play into it. The room went awkwardly silent. Late at the afternoon, my manager called me in and said I shifted the energy and made people feel bad after I'd tried to do something nice. He said team culture is important and sometimes you have to lean into things even if it's not your style. Now people are noticeably more distant. A coworker told me privately that I could have just laughed for 5 minutes and moved on. Another said I embarrassed the guy who organized it. But from my perspective, I didn't ask to be pranked. I didn't consent to being filmed. And I didn't think I should have to fake amusement just to preserve office morale. I didn't insult anyone. I didn't storm off. I just didn't perform the reaction they wanted. Was I wrong for not playing along? Was I wrong for calling my grandparents after my mum ran off during an argument? I'm 17 and I was recently at a sleepover with my best friend but asked my mum to pick me up early because I didn't sleep well and just wanted to go home. When she picked me up, she was already on a heated phone call with my stepdad. That wasn't unusual, so I didn't think much of it at first. But the argument escalated, and he told her he was leaving and hung up. My brother later confirmed he had walked out of the house, leaving my younger sister there too. My mum immediately sped home to try to catch him. On the way, we saw him walking near a park by a school. Without hesitation, she stopped the car in the middle of the road, left it running, and jumped out to chase him, leaving me in the passenger seat with her phone and everything else. Cars were coming from both directions. I don't have a driver's license, so I couldn't legally drive. I panicked and tried calling my stepdad, but his phone was off. A man who saw what happened came over and asked if I needed help. I know about stranger danger, but I was scared. He helped me move the car safely to the side of the road. After that, I called my grandpa, the closest family member nearby. He told me to get somewhere safe and check on my siblings. Since we live about a 5-minute walk from where the car was, I turned off the car, took the keys and phones, and walked home to make sure my brother and sister were okay. By that point, I had been sitting alone in the car for almost an hour. Once home, I kept trying to call my stepdad so they wouldn't panic about where the car and I were. When he finally answered, my mom started yelling at me for calling my grandpa. She said there was no reason to involve him and that I should have just stayed in the car and waited for her. I felt scared and responsible in the moment. I wasn't trying to cause drama, I just wanted to make sure everyone was safe. Was I wrong for calling my grandpa? Was I wrong for calling my roommate's mom after her boyfriend kept eating my food and coming over? I'm a nurse and work long, unpredictable shifts. Because of that, every Sunday I meal prep for the entire week. Nothing fancy, just chicken, rice, and vegetables portioned into containers so I can grab them and go. It's the only way I stay fed during busy weeks. My roommate has been dating a guy, I'll call him Mike, for about 3 months. At first, him coming over was no big deal. Then it turned into him staying over 3 to 5 nights a week. I didn't love it, but I tolerated it. 2 weeks ago, I came home after a brutal shift, exhausted and starving. I opened the fridge and found all my meal prep containers empty. Mike had eaten the entire week's worth of food while my roommate was at work. He didn't ask. He didn't text. He just helped himself. I was furious. I texted my roommate and she apologized, saying Mike felt bad. I told her it wasn't about whether he felt bad, it was about basic boundaries. You don't eat someone else's food without asking. Last weekend it happened again. This time, instead of fully empty containers, there were scoops taken out of each one. Like he sampled them all. That honestly felt worse somehow. I snapped. I told my roommate that Mike couldn't stay over anymore. I said I didn't care if he promised not to do it again. I was too angry and uncomfortable at that point. It genuinely stressed me out knowing he was in the apartment while I was at work. She didn't take me seriously. Mike kept coming over. That made me feel completely powerless in my own home, like I had zero say. Out of frustration, I called my roommate's mother and told her what was going on. I asked her to talk to her daughter about having Mike stop coming over. After that, my roommate finally called me to talk. She said she thought we could just work it out between us and reminded me of the one time she and Mike brought me dinner when they went out. She accused me of making her choose between me and him. Now she's giving me the silent treatment and telling people I lost it over food. I know calling her mom was extreme, but I felt ignored and disrespected in my own space. I don't think this is just about food, it's about boundaries and feeling safe in your home. Did I overreact? Was I wrong for pulling the bus stop called early so I don't miss my stop? I take a connecting bus to work every morning in a mid-sized West Coast city. Public transit here isn't exactly smooth, but this particular route gets me close to my office, so I rely on it. The issue is that this bus line doesn't announce every stop, only the major hubs. On top of that, the bus won't automatically stop at smaller stops unless someone pulls the cord. If no one signals, the driver just keeps going. I've asked a couple of drivers before if they could let me know when my stop is coming up, but most either shrug it off or seem too busy to help. I've tried using navigation apps in the city's transit tracker, but the updates lag. By the time the app shows I'm at my stop, we've already passed it. I also try looking out the window, but my bus leaves at 5:50 in the morning, and during the winter months it's still dark. A lot of the stops look similar, so it's hard to judge visually. After missing my stop several times and having to walk nearly 25 minutes instead of the usual 4, I started doing something different. When I think I'm about one stop away, based on timing and counting intersections, I pull the stop cord. The bus will pause briefly at the next stop, no one gets off, and then it continues. That pause helps me confirm where we are so I can pull it again at the right moment for my actual stop. I don't love doing this because I know it causes a short, unnecessary stop. But if I don't, I risk being late for work. Yesterday, the driver clearly noticed and called me out in front of other passengers, saying I was misusing the signal. I apologized, but I felt embarrassed. I genuinely don't know what the better solution is. I'm not trying to inconvenience anyone, I'm just trying to get to work on time without having a long walk in the dark. Was I wrong for handling it this way? Would I be wrong for confronting my husband's relative after she fed my baby behind our backs? My son is 10 months old and has a severe allergy to corn and anything derived from it. This isn't a mild sensitivity. If he consumes even a small amount, he ends up with a full body eczema flare, intense stomach pain, and bloody, mucus-filled stools for up to 3 days. It's awful to watch. Everyone in the family knows about this. I've spent countless hours researching ingredient labels, cross-contamination risks, and safe brands. When my husband took our 2 kids, our 4-year-old daughter and the baby, to his family's rural property overnight while I stayed in the city for an obligation, I packed every single thing our son would need to eat. Every puree, snack, and bottle was prepared in advance so there wouldn't be any guesswork. For context, the property has several houses close together. His great-aunt and great-uncle live in one home, and his grandparents live in another a short walk away. After breakfast at his relative's house, our son started getting fussy for his bottle. My husband had washed the bottles and left them drying at the grandparents' place, which is only a few hundred meters away. He ran over to grab one and was gone for less than 3 minutes. When he came back, his aunt proudly announced that the baby just loved her homemade cinnamon rolls. My husband immediately panicked and reminded her about the allergy, saying we can't give him random food without checking ingredients. She brushed it off and said it was just a couple of bites and that he'd be fine. He was not fine. It's now a day later and I've been holding a miserable, screaming baby who is covered in inflamed eczema and clearly in gastrointestinal pain. He's had bloody stools and hasn't been able to settle. I am exhausted and furious. What makes it worse is how quickly and casually it happened. She waited until my husband stepped away for literally a few minutes. It feels reckless at best and sneaky at worst. This isn't about differing parenting styles, this is about a documented medical issue that causes my child real suffering. I want to message her and tell her exactly how harmful and irresponsible her decision was. Part of me wants to be blunt about how unacceptable it is to feed someone else's child anything without explicit permission, especially when there's a known allergy involved. But I also know that once I sense something heated, I can't take it back. Would I be wrong to send a strongly worded message telling her how serious this is and how angry I am about what she did? Was I wrong for bursting my sister's child prodigy bubble? My older sister, Marina, had her first son 14 months ago, and ever since then she's been convinced she gave birth to a once-in-a-generation mind. I adore my nephew. He's sweet, funny, and totally lovable. But according to Marina, he's also operating on a level far beyond the average toddler. If he points to his nose, she calls it advanced body awareness. If he says a half-clear word, she swears most kids his age can't communicate that well. When he figured out how to push a toy car and make the wheel spin, she announced he clearly understands mechanics. She frequently mentions how her doctor is extremely impressed, which sounds to me like standard polite feedback every parent hears. What makes it harder is the subtle comparison. At family lunches she'll turn to me or our cousins and ask, "When did your kid start doing this?" But we'll be honest, that's elite, right? This technically phrased as curiosity, but it feels like she's waiting for confirmation that her son is ahead. Last weekend at our parents' house, she pulled out a board book and showed us how he could point to different animals when prompted. She started saying she wouldn't be surprised if he tested as gifted one day because of his pattern recognition. I chuckled and said something like, "He's a perfectly typical toddler. You just think everything he does is groundbreaking because you're his mom." The mood shifted instantly. She went quiet, then told me I was being cynical and unsupportive. Later she messaged me saying I made her feel foolish in front of everyone and that, as her sister, I should celebrate her excitement instead of knocking it down. I apologized and told her I didn't mean to embarrass her. But if I'm honest, the constant framing of normal milestones as extraordinary was starting to grate on me. I wasn't attacking her son, I was reacting to what feels like non-stop bragging wrapped in questions. She says we're fine now, but I can still sense some distance. Was I wrong for saying what I did, even if I felt it needed to be said? Was I wrong for telling my girlfriend to stop offering her food to everyone? My girlfriend, Alina, has a habit of offering her food to everyone at the table whenever we go out to eat. She says it's how she was raised, to make sure everyone else is taken care of before she starts eating. I've told her many times that it's kind but unnecessary. Everyone already has their own meal, and no one is judging her if she doesn't offer bites of her plate. The issue is that she doesn't just offer shareable appetizers. She'll offer pieces of her sandwich, forkfuls of pasta, even spoonfuls of soup. It often turns into people taking direct bites or using their utensils in her food, which, aside from being a little gross, usually leaves her with less than half of what she ordered. It becomes a bigger problem when we eat with my friend Derek. He's genuinely a good and loyal friend, but he has zero restraint around food and not much awareness in group dining situations. If something is offered, he takes it generously. In the past, he's eaten nearly an entire shared appetizer because the rest of us were chatting and being polite. He also tends to underpay when the bill comes. If something costs $14.75, he'll toss in $15 and assume it covers everything, not accounting for tax or tip. I specifically asked Alina not to offer her meal when Derek is around because I know how it ends. She says she doesn't want to single anyone out or change her behavior for one person. Last night we went out with friends again, Derek included. As usual, Alina offered her meal to the table. I nudged her lightly under the table as a reminder, and she just shrugged. Sure enough, Derek ended up eating most of her food, on top of finishing his own plate. Alina didn't say a word. On the drive home, she asked if we could stop somewhere else because she was still hungry. I agreed, but I also told her this was exactly what I had warned her about. I said she shouldn't be surprised when Derek eats more than she intended to give. I also admitted that it frustrates me feeling like I'm indirectly paying for Derek's meal when he ends up eating most of his and doesn't properly cover his share. I may have sounded irritated. This has been an ongoing conversation, and I feel like she dismisses my concerns. She was clearly upset after I said it, and things are tense now. Neither of us has outright called the other wrong, but it feels like we're both waiting for an apology. Was I out of line for pushing the issue? Am I wrong for asking my Spanish teacher to stop using the Spanish version of my nickname? My legal name is Jonathan Paul, but I've gone by JP for as long as I can remember. That's what my friends call me, what my coaches used in middle school, and what every teacher from freshman year onward has written on attendance sheets. It's a name that feels natural to me. This year, though, my Spanish teacher has decided to call me something different. In class, instead of saying JP, he pronounces each letter the Spanish way, J-P. The first time he said it, everyone laughed, including me. I assumed it was just a quick joke to illustrate pronunciation differences between English and Spanish. But it didn't stop there. Every single day during roll call, during group activities, when asking me questions, it's always J-P. At first I tried to ignore it, but after a few weeks it started to grate on me. It doesn't feel like my name anymore, it feels like a classroom bit that never ends. I spoke to him after class and politely asked if he could just call me JP, since that's what I prefer. He told me that because this is Spanish class, he uses the Spanish pronunciation of names when possible, and that JP is simply the Spanish equivalent of my initials. He emphasized that it's not an insult, just translation. I understand the logic, and I know he's not trying to mock me. Still, it's my name. I don't feel comfortable being called something I didn't choose, even if it's technically accurate in another language. I live in the U.S., and none of my other teachers translate my nickname into different pronunciations. Now I'm wondering if I'm being overly sensitive about something harmless, or if it's reasonable to expect a teacher to respect the name I prefer to go by. So, am I wrong for wanting him to stop? Was I wrong for reminding my friend of her past after she criticized other women? A friend of mine recently started seeing a new guy who's pretty conservative. Since dating him, she's adopted a lot of his views and has been posting frequently about purity, modesty, and traditional values. The other day she shared a story on social media saying that anyone who sleeps with multiple people is a slut and should be ashamed of themselves. That surprised me, because in the past she has told me about sleeping with more than one person. She has even teased me before for being a virgin. I responded to her privately, not publicly, and told her I was confused by her post, given what she had shared with me before. I didn't insult her or call her names. I just pointed out that it didn't line up with what she had previously said about her own experiences. She became very upset and claimed I was remembering wrong. Then she accused me of trying to shame her and throw her past in her face. Now I'm questioning whether I crossed a line by bringing it up at all. I felt like she was being hypocritical and unfair, especially since she had mocked me in the past. But she clearly feels attacked. Was I wrong for saying something? Was I wrong for not telling people that characters in my friend's novel were based on us? My best friend, Maya, is an author with a few published novels. She has a habit of weaving traits from people she loves into her characters, small things like personality quirks, physical features, or shared memories. It's never a one-to-one copy, but the inspiration is there. In her latest book, though, one character was very obviously inspired by me. Similar temperament, similar appearance, and even some parallel life experiences. The romantic lead opposite that character was clearly inspired by another close friend of ours, Jordan. In the story, those two characters end up in a relationship. For context, the three of us met in college. Jordan and I have never dated or had any romantic involvement in real life. I knew about the similarities because Maya and I have a tradition where I read the third draft of her manuscripts before publication. Jordan isn't much of a reader, so I didn't think to mention it. I also didn't bring it up to my husband. In my mind, these were fictional characters, inspired by real people, yes, but not actually us. The book was published, and I didn't give it much thought. A while later, we were all at another friend's place, and Jordan happened to be there. Maya asked if Jordan had read the book. Jordan said yes and mentioned being surprised that we ended up together in the story, adding that it felt a little strange. My husband overheard and asked what that meant. That's when Maya casually explained that the characters were based on Jordan and me. Both Jordan and my husband were taken aback. They asked why I hadn't given them a heads up. They said they felt blindsided and uncomfortable, especially since the characters' relationship was portrayed in detail. I explained that I don't usually share information about Maya's projects before release, and that the characters are fictional, not literal representations of us. Most readers wouldn't make the connection unless they knew us personally. Even so, they're still uneasy about it. Was I wrong for not warning them ahead of time? Was I wrong for refusing to rearrange my own house? I'm posting anonymously because my housemate follows my usual account. I'm a 31-year-old woman who inherited a 4-bedroom cottage in a small town in northern England after my uncle passed away 3 years ago. He didn't have any children, and we were very close, so he left the property to me. I spent nearly 18 months remodeling it, repainting, redoing the floors, and turning it into a place that truly felt like mine. Around the time I finished, a long-time friend of mine, also 31, split from her fiancé and suddenly had nowhere to live. I offered her a place to stay without hesitation. I gave her the second largest bedroom, about 15 square meters, and it has its own ensuite shower. I kept the primary bedroom for myself, turned the smallest bedroom into a studio since I work remotely as a graphic designer, and converted the attic into a hobby space where I host a weekly board game night with friends every Friday. I told her she could decorate her room however she liked and that she was free to use the kitchen, lounge, and backyard whenever she wanted. The only areas I asked her not to enter without permission were my bedroom, my studio, and the attic room. I don't charge her rent, she just contributes toward electricity, water, and shared groceries. I also asked for basic courtesy, a heads up about overnight guests, keeping noise down after 10 p.m. on weeknights, and maintaining her own room. After about 40 months of living together with no obvious issues, she suddenly told me she feels cramped and that it's unfair she only has her bedroom and bathroom plus shared spaces, while I have multiple private rooms in addition to the communal areas. I was taken aback because she'd never expressed dissatisfaction before. I reminded her gently that the house is mine and that the layout was established before she moved in. She became upset and said we need to reconsider how the rooms are divided. Now I feel uneasy because I stepped in to help her when she was struggling, and while I'm happy she feels comfortable here, I can't shake the feeling that asking me to redistribute space in my own home crosses a line.